Joining us now is Tory MP and former Conservative leader, Sir Iain Duncan Smith. Thank you for joining us, Iain. Is this Sunak's last chance to win the public's favour before a general election?
Well, clearly the King's speech sets out the agenda, but it should also send a message, particularly this period in government, of what the government, the Prime Minister, wishes to do and will come forward with later on over plans post an election, should he be elected. So the Prime Minister, I think, is quite right to set at the cornerstone of this antisocial behaviour and crime and sentencing, because it's very important. I mean, many of us as constituency MPs have lots and lots of cases where, you know, people are let off when they shouldn't be. People are given suspended sentences or community sentences, which can be effective, but sometimes in the wrong cases. And maximising this idea about rape and understanding what a violent crime it is, and to finally stop the nonsense that somehow this suggests that there was complicity. There's none at all. So rape should carry the most severe of sentences, and they're saying that it's likely that those who are rapists will fulfill their full sentence without any chance of remand, and I think that's important as well.
Do you sense, Iain, that crime and... I mean, all of those things, as you rightly say, are hugely important, of course they are, but is crime and punishment as an umbrella issue the biggest thing that people are thinking about? Would people not perhaps prefer more on things like the cost of living, opportunities to get back into the workplace, that sort of area?
Well, let's separate these for a minute. If you ask me which is the thing that constituents really worry about a lot now, if not the most, it is antisocial behaviour leading to, of course, crime. Antisocial behaviour comes in many forms, and we have, we've had gang stabbings in my constituency, lots of violent behaviour. All this sort of stuff is number one on their agenda. You hardly ever meet a constituent who doesn't worry about what had been going on in the alleyway around the back with drug dealing or whatever it happens to be. So this, first and foremost, is the key to the whole idea about what the public thinks of success and failure, and it's quite right. And the second bit, of course, is that serious crime does need to be dealt with quite significantly, and those who commit that crime need to be dealt with. You asked about the cost of living. Of course, the cost of living is a huge perennial problem right now for the public, quite rightly too, coming out of COVID and then being hit by the energy crisis because of the war in Ukraine, and this war in Gaza and Israel is not going to help that at all, being the Middle East is the main oil provider. But having said all that, that's really going to be dealt with in the spending review and the budget. So this isn't really something you'd expect to see in the King's speech, but certainly I'm very much in favour of getting the burden off people's backs and making sure that we get growth in the economy next year that sustains more jobs, better paid jobs, and a better lifestyle for most of my constituents.
Sir Iain, with respect, it's all well and good to be tough on crime and punishment, but after 13 years of Tory rule, our prisons are full. As tough as we can be on criminals, we have no place to put them at present.
Well, there's the biggest building programme going on in prisons now since the Victorian era. Been a huge amount of money being spent and committed by the Prime Minister over the last 3 years. He was Chancellor as well. So this is now carrying on. New prisons are being opening up, new extensions, etc. So this is a huge prison building programme. And with respect to all commentary on this, the truth is I've been here for now 30 years or so, and I do see endless government legislation on law and order and on sentencing, because things move, things change, new ideas come forward, and also, by the way, also new types of crime emerge. And so it's important to keep up with that. So you will always see law and order and crime bills going through. But the key thing I think it boils down to is how safe do people on the street feel? How safe do they feel in their homes? Do they feel that those who have a very deliberate and dangerous attitude towards people's normal lives, going about their business, if they're dealt with? They want to see the police act and act toughly when necessary. And, the marches is another example where I've been getting a lot of concern about what may be happening on Remembrance Sunday, and I posted about this a few days ago. So this is all for them part of much the same boat, which is the police are there to enforce the law. Let's make sure they do.
And in terms of getting this through Parliament, I mean, the chances of it happening all before the next election is pretty slim, of course. Isn't one of the problems, Sir Iain, that you have, and this would apply to any government that's been in power for 13 years, is that many people will watch this and look at this and think, well, hang on a second, you can't suddenly start getting all high and mighty on crime, punishment and everything that's gone wrong when you are the very people that have been in charge of all of this, presiding over all of this.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, there's always going to be an argument about law and order and crime, because that's what governments have to deal with. As I said earlier on, you discover there are newer things that you have to deal with, some things that aren't working that you have to change. That's the natural order of how government works. And, you know, I sat through Labour governments and Conservative governments, that part goes on. So it's not a case of suddenly everything is your fault, therefore it means try somebody else. The truth is, these things are with us. Crime is with us all the time, and criminals are very quick to spot new ways of doing things. I was looking at cybercrime the other day, and the advances in that are enormous. And the advances in AI, of course, will help criminals as much as they help good people to find solutions to problems. So all of that goes on and on. The government itself, Rishi Sunak, is very clear, I think, that what he needs to do is make sure the public understand that the government has their interests at heart. And I just come back to the other point, which I said earlier on. You know, no government has hit the buffeting that this government has hit with COVID. Unprecedented lockdown, unprecedented economic consequences, criminal consequences, education consequences, and so on. All of this, plus then followed by the energy crisis as a result of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. All of this has happened within the last 4 years, and that is unprecedented completely. So the government has to kind of try and chart a route through this and come out with stuff that the government and the public agree needs to be done.
So, Iain, you mentioned briefly there the planned protests this weekend over Armistice weekend. And the Home Secretary, your Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, saying over the past couple of days that these are hate marches, whereas protesters would argue that, yes, whilst there are certain people within the crowd, they are in a minority, the people who are speaking with hateful language. Overwhelmingly, these are supposed to be peaceful protests calling for a ceasefire. How responsible is the Home Secretary for any violence that might potentially erupt over the course of the weekend because of that kind of inflammatory language that she's using in the media?
Well, I don't think she was inflammatory. I understand what she felt. And the answer is that in these marches, there have been Hamas flags waved, jihad cries. And let's be very clear about the sort of chant from the river to the sea. It is not some gentle idea about freedom for Palestine. It is, in fact, a very clear, and it's been made clear, by the way, the head of Hezbollah a few days ago made it very clear that the purpose of Hezbollah and of Hamas and what that chant is all about is to eradicate the Jews in Palestine and Israel. So the reality here is that all that stuff that's going on the streets is hateful, is all about intimidating the British public, particularly those who are Jewish. And I have a Jewish sister-in-law, and she said to me she's never felt more threatened in her life living in the capital, but even living in England. And I think, therefore, the key problem here is trying to make sure that we eradicate that. And it's up to those organizers not to just go on blithely by and say, well, of course, it's not the march because it's just a few people. Those few people become the march because that's what people remember. That's what people fear. And it should be intolerable that that should take place. And I personally believe that the police have plenty of evidence now that if these marches take place during what is an incredibly important period, that weekend of laying of wreaths, remembering peacefully and calmly many of those who never came back. I was a soldier myself. There are many that I want to remember in the course of that. And I simply say to them, they have no right to march to try and create trouble. Okay. They've had plenty of days to do it, and they'll have plenty of days after.